Tens of thousands of people killed, many more injured, and between 60 to 100,000 children abducted, forced to become sex slaves or child soldiers. It is recent history for the people of northern Uganda. The reason? A war that spanned 3 decades as the forces of the Lord's Resistance Army under their leader Joseph Kony fought to install a government in the country based on the Ten Commandments. The LRA, born out of a 1980s movement that represented the Akoli people in northern Uganda, who then became caught in the crossfire. Kony himself defending his stance and believing himself to be guided by the Holy Spirit.
Those atrocities which was happened in Uganda, that is not me or that is not my people. Atrocity which was taking place in Uganda was done by Uganda government. Only that I don't have means or I don't have good communication to the world which can inform the people that those things which was happened was not LRA, but the government, they have many machineries to inform the world.
In 2006, peace negotiations meant a truce, and then the LRA left Uganda. It remains, though, active in neighbouring countries like the Democratic Republic of Congo, South Sudan and the Central African Republic. Kony himself still at large, wanted by the International Criminal Court. But Dominic Ongwen, known as the White Ant, has become the first member of the LRA to appear before the court. Now, he's accused of 70 war crimes and crimes against humanity. One accusation, he ordered his men to kill, then cook and eat civilians. Northern Uganda has now seen relative peace for 10 years. The people there trying to recover. As the economy grows, though, how can they forget? Many of them were themselves sex slaves or child soldiers. Well, this report by Tyus Brook and Anthony Lesmer begins in the countryside around Gulu.
The day passes chaotically behind the wheel. David is a co-founder of a charity, Pathway to Peace. His mission: to reunite Lord's Resistance Army deserters with their families.
Right now we are going to see Obu Nyeko Francis. He's one of the defector LRA returnee who returned the late 2013 and were able to reunite him home with his family.
It's been 2 months since David's last visit.
I just came back from the field.
You look tired like a chicken.
I'm so exhausted.
David asks for news, checking on his protégé's progress. Francis is proud to show off his field.
Over there, I'm going to plant maize and sorghum.
Can you grow them together?
It's going to be okay. I've seen it a lot in Sudan.
Francis was abducted just a few meters from here when he was 12. He rose up the ranks of the LRA from child soldier to lieutenant colonel.
Ever since I was young, I've seen a lot of killings. I've seen it. I've grown up in it. And so I've participated in a lot of bad things. I've seen a lot of wounded people, a lot of dead people.
After his involvement in such horrors, Francis's relatives feared his return, but David reassured them. Francis is keen to show us his new life. With the help of Pathway to Peace, he's launched a small enterprise.
I sell these lollipops, 200 shillings, and these here, 100 shillings.
His business is still in its infancy, but he's living his childhood dream.
Before I was kidnapped, my dream was to become a businessman. Before I was abducted, I used to rely on my father. I was a child. Then I became dependent on the LRA. And when I finally got out, I still felt dependent. But now, with my business, I'm a free man.
Gulu province was under constant threat of attack by the LRA for a decade and a half. Raids by the rebels, led by Joseph Kony, were a feature of daily life. Once a refugee camp, this is now a thriving village.
As you can see now, people are back in life. Behind us is a market, and people come here like to trade from everywhere. So it has really changed.
David wasn't always a humanitarian. he has a personal story that explains his dedication to reconciliation. In January 2002, when he was 17, the LRA encircled his village. He spent 6 months with the rebels.
The first thing they asked me was, who do you love the most? Your mom or your dad? And of course, at first I said I love both. But then I said I love my dad. And they took him and killed him in presence. Every day, every night, the one thing you will think of, am I going to make it to the next day or not? Then on a daily basis, you're either walking or engaged in a gunfire with the soldiers or raiding villages.
In the heart of the bush, radio is the only contact with the outside world. The rebels know this jingle well. It's targeted at them.
In my program today, I'm going to bring for you one of our traditional leaders to pass a message to the people in captivity.
The principle is always the same. An LRA defector uses his story to encourage others to follow.
Well, briefly let me summarize what the old man, our chief, really was talking about in this very important program. Whoever may wish to come will really benefit and continue benefiting. And resettlements under the Amnesty Commission is also in place. So now may I take the opportunity to thank you so much for having listened to the program, because whenever I come for peace. Thank you very much and goodbye.
Johnny's been reaching out to LRA militants for 20 years. For him, the weekly broadcast remains necessary.
The aim of the show is to prepare the young ones under captivity to know that there is life here, much as they are already indoctrinated that there is only life in the jungle.
In total, nearly 20,000 LRA personnel have defected, sometimes thanks to this radio program. Former rebels now live among the general population, but the years of pillaging, death and rape leave their mark. For some, returning is too difficult. They can't move on from the violence. And the forced coexistence is not accepted by everyone.
At the moment, I say no reconciliation, but because in our culture, once you have taken somebody to jail, means that you have not reconciled with the person. Bring the person back home. Even we the Cholis, we are also blaming the government of all what they were being doing. We were not protected.
We have no any beef with anybody. If we are together as one now.
However, there are still, a number of cases here and there. There are others who still have the trauma with them. But at least, I'm sure, a greater percentage has, changed and has adopted to the environment.
David brings us to Atiak, nearly 50 kilometres north of Gulu. On 20th of April 1995, the LRA massacred more than 200 people here.
Here, when you look, Nyeko is actually my cousin. He was at a technical school here. 2 of them were killed on this date. And it's like bringing me the picture of how it was exactly on the 20th of April. I can see the faces, I can see the bodies, I can see the people crying, like it's so present. It is a reminder to the new generations because it's very easy to forget what has happened. And you never know, this conflict is not over. The LRA is still active and they're still killing. You never know, they may come back.
A few kilometres away, we meet Evelyn Amoni. She's one of Joseph Kony's former wives. Today, she's visiting her grandmother, Alal Paula, who's 93 years old.
Hello, Grandma. How are you? You look ill.
Yes, I'm not doing well.
You can sit down.
I can be on my knees.
You sit. You don't have to be on your knees.
Evelyn was abducted here. She was just a child. It was in August 1994, a date that will remain with her grandmother until she dies.
You'd just got back from school. You'd just got back home. And you found me cooking. You hadn't eaten anything yet. And then they arrived. They abducted you.
When they started taking me away, do you remember how you started following them and talking to them?
Yeah, I was really sad. I followed you, but they chased me away. They chased me away and told me that if I followed them, they would do something bad to me. And then I stopped and came back home.
The LRA spared her grandmother, but never told Evelyn.
When I was being held, I couldn't stop thinking about my grandmother because the LRA guys had her dress, so I thought she'd been killed.
The rebels took all the family's goods. Evelyn has never shared details of her captivity with her grandmother. She tells us to visit her the next day. At her home in Gulu town, Evelyn tells us her story. The first months were the hardest. She was beaten regularly before LRA chief Joseph Kony took her under his wing.
You know, my life in the bush was not easy at all, and I realised how young I was. At first, Kony said he was going to take care of me, that he was my father. But then later he started changing his mind, saying I was going to be his wife. And I remember one day Joseph Kony took me into his room, but I escaped and got to the command room.
She was 14 when the rebel leader made her his wife. A few months later, she gave birth to her first daughter, Bakita.
This is my daughter, Bakita.
Evelyn escaped in 2005 with two of her children. Bakita, now 17, lives with her uncle in the capital, Kampala.
When I was at my brother's house, his wife would mistreat Bakita, do anything to her. And when I said something, she'd say, "Why did you give birth in the bush if you didn't want your child to be beaten?" I was sad. That's why I left my family and started my new life.
Evelyn rose above her experiences. She wrote her memoirs and is now a women's rights activist. Once a week, she leads a syndicate of former LRA sex slaves.
Oh, there are so many of you today.
Yes, and some others just left.
The group is called Walakiza, meaning God is merciful. Evelyn launched the initiative in 2007. Nearly a decade later, she's created 16 other groups with a total of almost 600 members. Victims share their experiences and help each other through life. They make goods for sale. The earnings allow them to send their children to school and help members in difficulty.
I think for women it's worse than the man because women have children. The man leave their children with the women.
These women have decided to make use of their freedom to organize.
We formed 10 points, 10 advocacy points, of which we wanted actions upon. One of them was to really make those who violated us, the commanders who violated us and have returned, to apologize for what they have done to us, for the wrong things they have done to us.
Joseph Kony and the LRA never occupied Gulu town. Instead, they staged hit and run attacks. The once ramshackle town centre now has a covered market.
3,000 for this skirt. 3,000.
Back in the days, the LRA could easily go through. They could come this way, and then other people could come on the other way. I don't think if the LRA had to come back now, they would dare to enter here, because once they enter, it's going to be hard for them to get out. So it's really nice and beautiful.
The work's just been completed.
And so
the market is a symbol of Renaissance.
I mean, growing up, I never expected to see something like this in Gulu, because all I could think of was the war, and I didn't know where it would take us. But right now, to see it out of northern Uganda and see a structure like this is mind-blowing for me, and I hope it will continue.
With its dynamic market, Gulu's status as northern Uganda's principal town is confirmed. 4 hours north of Kampala, it's on the up. The atrocities of Joseph Kony and his men have left their mark. But David and many other residents are determined to remain positive. Young people here move forward without forgetting the past. Here in Gulu, citizens are eager to seize control of their destiny.
Thais Brook and Anthony Lesmer revisiting their Gulu. Well, that's all from this week's edition of Revisited. You can watch it again and all the other editions as well on our website. That's france24.com. Stay with us, more coming up.